I'd like to call this meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Mr. Wilson or Jackie, would you please call the roll?
I can call the roll. Margaret Clemens.
Here.
Ryan Wright Randolph.
Here.
Rudy Garitas.
Hello, team.
Jeff McKim.
Here.
Dee Owens.
Here.
Jerry Pittsford. Jim Stainbrook.
In the last meeting I attended, one of the subcommittees, I think there was some confusion. And in that confusion, I reacted inappropriately. I'd like to apologize for that as I am present here.
Julie Thomas. Amy Thompson.
Here.
We have 7 members and a quorum.
Would you please introduce the evidence, Mr. Wilson?
I request that the following items be introduced as evidence for tonight's meeting. The Monroe County Comprehensive Plan is adopted and amended. Monroe County Zoning Ordinance as adopted and amended. Monroe County Subdivision Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Rules of Procedure of the Monroe County Plan Commission, and the case is advertised and docketed for hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move we accept the evidence as read.
Second.
Second.
I'll call the roll on the admission of the evidence. So vote in favor is vote to admit the evidence. Tron Irene Randolph.
Yes.
Rudy Garitas.
Yes.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
Amy Thompson.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
The evidence is approved by a 7-0 vote.
Now, the agenda has been posted and advertised and subsequently amended. Is there a motion to approve?
Move we approve the agenda.
Second.
The motion is to approve the agenda as amended. Vote in favor is vote to approve the amended agenda. Bernie Garitas.
Yes.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
Dee Owens.
Yes.
Jim Stainbrook.
Yes.
Amy Thompson.
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Yes.
Tron Ray Randolph.
Yes.
The agenda as amended is approved by a 7-0 vote.
Okay, now is it, I believe there are minutes from the last meeting? No, there are none. Okay, so the first items on the agenda pertain to administrative business. The Plan Commission policy regarding planned unit development bonds. Let's see, who is presenting that? Is it Tammy Bierman?
I can present that one, Margaret. So
Okay.
In our ordinance under Chapter 811, which is PUDs, there isn't clear guidance on the type of financial guarantee that we would be able to take in. So Dave Schilling sent Larry and I an email and just discussed that by rule, the Plan Commission could vote the following. So for the purposes of Monroe County Code 811-5C6, the 2 types of bonds, financial guarantees that are acceptable to the Plan Commission are letters of credit and certified checks that satisfy the requirements of Monroe County Code 858-3. The other financial guarantees that we have accepted in the past are not as acceptable by legal and planning because it involves a third party. So these 2 items, letters of credit or certified cashier's checks, allow us to be able to work with just the bank, and that's the preferred method. So I don't think Dave is on, but does anyone have any questions about this rule?
So,
Jeff?
yes.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So this would basically explicitly prohibit surety bonds. Is that
Yes.
is that what you're trying to prevent?
Right.
And so would that make it, I guess I want to know how much of a burden is this going to be? I mean, what are we making more restrictive?
Mm-hmm. So it's more expensive for a developer to post a letter of credit or a cashier's check But on the other hand, it does allow us to have a more defined amount from the petitioner that we think, will incentivize quicker processes, quicker development of the improvements that are left over. So it's more costly, but it does allow us to just work with the bank and not have a third party involved.
Okay, thank you.
Bernie, did you have a question?
Yeah, a couple. So when Dave describes two types of quote bonds / financial guarantees, Jeff hit it. So bonds really, neither of these two types of securities, neither one is a bond, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that was the first one. And then explain to me why these cost more for the, I'll just not developer, but the petitioner, whoever's got to post the bond. Why do these cost more? I'm not sure I realize that.
Yeah, so my understanding is that if you are to do like a surety or performance bond, there's some sort of like insurance allowance, and you kind of have I guess it's like risk against what you already have in the accounts, but letters of credit and certified checks essentially are one and the same, in that a letter of credit says that if you come to the bank and you want to cash this, we will give you all of that money up front, essentially is what it's saying.
Right. So my question, so the letter of credit nor the certified check, you do not believe they cost more to the petitioner? And maybe I misunderstood what was said first.
No, I think that the surety bonds, I think those can be posted for less than the amount, or they can essentially, it costs them less in their accounts, however they're doing it, to be able to allow that to happen, to give us a letter of credit or certified check. Cashier's check's the most expensive. Letter of credit, I think, is a little less. And then surety bond is the least, is my understanding. And I didn't prepare a little bit more example for this, but this would only come into effect for PUDs that don't involve subdivisions, of which we have 2 forthcoming. So that's why we want to establish a procedure.
Okay, I want to keep the mic for just another minute. And I think you've done a nice job here, Jackie. So you're more than prepared. So just put some shade on this. With working with clients over the years, I know that the county struggled at times with the surety bonds, because basically you're trying to get money out of an insurance company. If I'm insulting any insurance companies out there by saying this, it's hard to get money out of an insurance company. Okay. So, and then I think that there was a requirement that the surety had the insurance company, we'll just call it that, had to be within 50 miles of Monroe County. Is that correct?
Within 60 miles, that is in the subdivision control, yes.
Okay, so yeah, the letter of credit and the certified checks, most of the time those were the means by which people I worked with did anyway, because of I think the 60 miles was a little bit of a burden, and then the letter of credit and the certified checks were easy enough. So I'll just drop it at that, but I would support this.
Okay, and I see Dave's logged on as well. If you want to chime in at all, Dave, regarding the rule that the Plan Commission could vote to allow letters of credit or certified cashier's check to satisfy the PUD bond requirements.
Yeah, I think the way we have our subdivision control set up, they have a bond, but the bond is backed up by a letter of credit or a certified check. I think a lot of people, sometimes developers, want to do the insurance bond route because it's a little cheaper for them. And the other two options tie up lines of credit for them, or they have to put the money down themselves. So it's more expensive for them, and can sometimes prevent them from doing what they want to do. But we have, in the past, we have had trouble collecting from insurance companies on bonds. And as you know, Bernie, the reason we said it's within 60 miles is because when it came time call a letter of credit. We wanted to have one of our staff be able to drive up there and back where within 60 miles to the bank within a day. So it wasn't a hardship for us. And what else about that? That's what was behind all that.
Has this been I know it's been advertised. Has this been floated out in the development community just to understand what kind of resistance that there may be for this?
Yeah,
No.
I don't know that we've done that. I think it's coming to light recently because we're starting to get, I think, out of town developers who don't use local banks. They use their own Bank of America or whatever bank they go to in their city. And they don't have a relationship with a local bank. So they're always trying to send us a letter of credit from some bank that's 300 miles away or trying to do an insurance bond. And so I think that's one of the reasons why this is coming up now. And I think we're just trying to make it consistent with our subdivision procedures through this rule change.
Mr. Wilson and Mr. McKim?
I just want to kind of reiterate what both Jackie and David said. I don't believe we're getting very many insurance bonds. I think most developers, particularly local developers, will go with a cashier's check or a letter of credit. I think theoretically it could be somewhat less expensive from the standpoint. It's like a criminal bond. If you post a cash bond, the money's out of your pocket for the time your trial is pending. If you post a surety bond, it can be 10% of the total amount, but you don't get that 10% back. And I think that's somewhat similar to the way these surety bonds work. But my experience is we've not been getting a lot of surety bonds lately. And secondly, I think the overall experience I've ever had dealing with surety bonds is they're almost impossible to get. They're kind of like a claim for title insurance. The companies don't pay. There's always an excuse for not paying. So I think it's a little easier for us to administer. And I don't think it's going to pose any hardship to any developer that's capable of doing a project.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. McKim and then Mr. Enright Randolph.
I just wanted to clarify that this will, if this change is passed, then the requirements for the bonding requirements for a PUD that does not involve a subdivision will be the same as that does involve a subdivision? Or will there still be a residual difference?
Jeff, we're trying to get closer to the point where it's the same as the subdivision control. Yes.
But what will be the difference if this passed?
So there's still some residual requirements under the subdivision control ordinance that we're not, unless they can agree to those additional standards. So like, for instance, we do a subdivision improvement agreement that follows with the subdivision that says, here are the improvements, you have X amount of time to complete them. And in lieu of that, I think we are just going to say you cannot have a certificate of occupancy or land use certificate. So it's more so just in the completion phase, but it would be in terms of the payments accepted and trying to get the bank within 60 miles. The financial piece is going to be the same. It's what we're striving for.
Thank you.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
I think my question has left. I kind of was just wondering kind of the pros and cons and what issue we're trying to address and fix. Unfortunately, I lost a little bit of connectivity when Dave was speaking, and I think his was what I was really trying to hear. So I guess I just only have a comment. Like, I'm curious why we didn't see this at the admin meeting to kind of talk a little more extensively about it, because this is definitely not something I have a lot of experience in. So to bring it to a regular session to act on, I don't necessarily feel super confident and comfortable with completely understanding the impacts of this change. So I leave it to my colleagues and their expertise to help clarify what the gains are of potentially supporting this, or the alternative, why we shouldn't. That's kind of my comment. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that I feel a little uncertain about weighing and making a decision with getting all of this just today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph, and I'd like to recognize myself. I'd like staff to be a little bit more explicit about what, if any, are the protections provided to our fellow community members through this change in the bond issue.
Dave, do you want me to answer that, or would you like to?
Yeah, if you take a stab at it, that'd be great.
Okay, so what Dave had mentioned before, a surety bond is through kind of an insurance adjustment or insurance allowance. So if we cannot accept that money into our account line and we can't complete out the requirements for, let's say, a PUD that has public improvements, then we lose that leverage to be able to finish out the development to those standards. There are other points at which we can withhold occupancy. We can, withhold other things that they're wanting, like permits, but this allows us to have some assurance that the development will meet the requirements that were laid out in the development plan. So as we look at different financial guarantees, a letter of credit and a cashier's check gives staff a little bit more confidence, I'd say a lot more confidence, in that we'd be able to cash that amount and finish the development if it came down to that and the developer walked away.
Thank you. That's important to me because I do know people personally who have paid up front for a home and things did not go well with the developer. So this kind of additional protection, I think, is an important thing to consider and discuss. So are there any other members of the Plan Commission who'd like to weigh in on this or to say anything? If none, we can open it up to, I guess, the public. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Do you see anybody, Jackie?
I believe they're one of the petitioners for a later case. It has their hand raised for the later case. They've had their hand raised since the beginning of the meeting. So I don't think that they're wanting to speak on this, but just to verify, I'll call on them and make sure.
Okay, thank you.
I will note for the record that both Jerry Pittsford and Julie Thomas have arrived. So we now have all 9 members of the Plan Commission.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Dennis,
Yes.
did you wish to speak about the changes to the Chapter 811 for PUDs, or are you interested in speaking on the Heritage Creek?
I'm interested on speaking on that Heritage Creek if it is necessary. So
Okay. I will call on you when we get to that agenda item. We're not quite there yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak regarding this issue? Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in opposition to this issue? If not, we bring it back to the members of the Plan Commission for any further discussion and possibly a motion. Julie Thomas?
Yeah, I'm a little late to this discussion. I apologize. I am very concerned just having a sentence given to us for a rule change. I would like this information that was presented tonight regarding how bonds are paid, what difficulty we've encountered, et cetera. I'd like something more written up about the pros and cons of this before I'm willing to vote on it. Thank you.
Sure.
Is that a motion to table?
I move that we continue this till the December regular meeting.
I
Okay,
second.
okay. Is this a voting item, Jackie?
I think you could just, I think we can continue it since it's
Okay, let's
administrative.
continue it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the second item on the agenda under administrative business is the review of a draft timeline for the CDO. So Jackie or Larry, if you'd like to present that.
Sure. So within the packet, we had put together a more detailed timeline for the county development ordinance. This was something that was brought up at an executive committee meeting, and staff thought that was a good idea to work backwards on where we think that we could be with the CDO in the next year. So what we have done is separated into Module 2 and Module 3, similar to what the consultants have done for us. Module 2, just as a reminder, are the zones and permitted uses, CARS chapter, historic preservation, environmental constraints, the full outline of what's in Module 2. I think Plan Commission has a preliminary draft, but it is also in the status update that we've had and that I can resend to anyone. So what we're suggesting is starting in 2022, if the Plan Commission would like and agree, we could transition Plan Commission administrative meetings for CDO review. Pending current planning cases could receive time, just initial time for Q&A by PC members, but we think that in order to have the Plan Commission fully review this county development ordinance and spend enough time on it, we think that we'll be needing those administrative meetings and likely additional special meetings, but we wanted to propose that as part of the timeline. We have number 1 is staff drafting and review of Module 2. So that's ongoing, and that's going to be, we think, until February 1st, 2022. So what we're thinking is that and this is what it entails as part of that review. Right now we're working on uses and definitions primarily, but we're thinking that we're going to be able to prioritize and release a draft of the use table and the definitions prior to that February date to have that for review in January of 2022 at a Plan Commission administrative meeting or regular meeting, depending. Then we would, from there, have the staff provide consultants with updated edits. And then the consultants would need time to revise Module 2 for a full Plan Commission review of that entire module in February. And then that would be released and go to 2 Plan Commission meetings, March and April. From there, we would have a vote of the Plan Commission to allow staff to send Module 2 draft to professionals if you feel it's ready. And that would be sometime around April or May. And then also a vote to proceed with Module 3, again, if the Plan Commission feels that the Module 2 is ready. And then staff consultants provide final draft of Module 2 in June 2022. So just as a reminder, after we complete Module 2 and move on to Module 3, all 3 modules, Modules 1, 2, and 3 will come back together. And under this timeline I've outlined below, that's when the actual public hearings will begin. So under Module 3, which would be final definitions and some design standards like landscaping, parking, signage, we anticipate the consultants to be able to release a draft for staff by August. And that staff would need a few months, if it's similar like the Module 2, to review those internally. And then we would think that we would be able to have that release of that draft by November and December 2022. And then we would be looking for consultants to make edits to all 3 modules in early 2023. And then we would be releasing the modules 1 through 3 for Plan Commission review. And then again, we would vote by the Plan Commission, submit modules 1 to 3 for public review if you feel it is ready. Any setup of future public hearing dates. And then also staff to do public engagement regarding all 3 modules, and that would be in March and April. And then from there, we're anticipating, if it's ready and it's allowable by the Plan Commission, that we would have joint public hearings with the Plan Commission and the county commissioners in May and June 2023. And then a Plan Commission vote is anticipated July 2023, and a county commissioner vote sometime possibly in August of 2023. So does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Stainbrook has his hand raised. Hello, Mr. Stainbrook.
Hello, Margaret. Hello, Jackie. Jackie, I don't have a specific question on this. It gives every appearance of being well thought out, but just in retrospect, and I suppose looking towards the future, Jackie, and this may be an awkward question for you, but having started this process, I believe in 2017, or I know in 2018, but I think the initial indications were in 2017. I want to be careful here. I don't want to be crude again, or at least rude by an implied criticism, but I'll go ahead. This is in good humor. I've never been involved in a board, a commission, reading the newspaper, just intuitively for that matter, that took this long to get done. And now everybody else, all 8, probably understand this, but I guess my question is, to the extent you can clarify, then here I'll make the interrogative. Why and how did this take so long?
Sorry, muted. So as you know, the history, Jim, you mentioned 2017 with prior consults, that contract was terminated, and we took the remainder of that contract and were able to find a consulting company that would work with staff to help us in the drafting process. Because we had the remainder of that amount of the initial contract in the contract that was sent to county council, the anticipation was that staff would take the lead on a lot of the drafting. So for instance, staff was the one to do the draft zoning map completely. The consultants did not assist in that. So that takes time, and that's kind of why it has the timeline it has. That is something that could be discussed if this is too slow. If people would like to have the planning staff see if there is any ability to ask the council for additional funds to maybe have the consultants play a larger part. But this is just generally how long it's been taking us, especially with the Module 2 draft. We're finding that there's quite a bit that we need to go over and just do ourselves at this point. So if that answers your question.
Well, thank you, Jackie. I think it's ironic. Jeff had his hand up. I'm not sure how. Margaret, thank you. I'm not sure it shouldn't have gone to Jeff first. But anyway, since Jackie, you mentioned the county council, I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing again. I just wanted to kind of understand what was happening. And the implication of that seems to almost go back to the county council. And I think Jeff's going to explain how that's not the case. Jeff's, as I say, he's my go-to man for logic and data and general condition of the world. So maybe Jeff can throw some light on that, but okay, Jackie, thank you. You've been most helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook, Mr. McKim, and then Mr. Garatas.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I really was not planning to address the county council aspect. I think it would certainly be a legitimate request if staff and the plan commission felt like it was a good value proposition to accelerate the process a little bit by increasing the contract with the contractors. As Jackie mentioned, there was certainly money expended through the first contractor, and after that contract was terminated, they've done the best. Staff has done the best they can to make do with the existing resources, which I think is great. I also think that idea has the way they proceeded has kind of given staff more ownership of the code rather than just having the contractor deliver a finished product that we then have to live with or vote up, and the commissioners have to vote up and down. I don't have a strong opinion right now, but I certainly think it would be a legitimate thing for the plan commission to discuss if they wanted to consider asking the council for an additional appropriation to accelerate the process. It's a legitimate question. What I really wanted to comment on was just that I especially appreciate the suggestion that plan commission admin meetings would start to be focused on the CDO. I mean, I think we've definitely not been able to, as a plan commission, been able to spend a lot of time and effort on the CDO, because we have a ton of petitions. I mean, we've had meeting after meeting that's just chock full of petitions. And plus, I think COVID has also made it more difficult. I think there are a lot of things we would have liked to have done in person that we just haven't been able to do. But I really like the idea of prioritizing the CDO in future admin meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas.
Yeah, first off, Jim, I always appreciate your candor. So just so you know. Secondly, I think that in probably March of 2020, none of us would have realized that we were still dealing with this mess that we've got. And I think that one of the delays that we see, and I'm not one to blame all the world's woes on COVID-19 and the pandemic, but I mean, we need to collectively figure out how, not collectively, because I know that this is more of a county decision issue. I'm not piling that on anybody, but we need to start meeting together again. We need to find a way to meet together, have face-to-face discussions. Meetings would move more quickly, more smoothly, more informatively. We would probably understand what the public is trying to tell us. We'd be able to look at the public face-to-face. But, I look at the NFL games on Sunday, I look at the IU games on Saturday or Friday or through the week. And I think that in the interest of clear communication, that we've got to get to a point where we can meet together. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Is there any further discussion on the draft timeline for the CDO? Okay, well, it doesn't take much further discussion, right, Tammy? I mean, should we invite public comment?
I don't think that this needs to have a public comment, not necessarily asking for you to vote on it, just a review and taking down some notes. If there's anything that you find later on that you want to comment about, feel free to shoot me an email, shoot Larry an email. This is again a draft, so we're up to making changes to this as anyone sees fit.
Well, I find this very helpful, and I really appreciate Commissioner Thomas's recommendation that we put together a timeline so that we know, what we're facing, what we have faced, what we're gonna face, and we can help to be more prepared for the conversation. And I really appreciate having this timeline about what we hope to use to shape the future of our county. So I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. And thank you, Commissioner Thomas, for your leadership in ensuring that we have this timeline. It really can help things move more smoothly. So the next item on the agenda is item number SPP-21-6, the Highland Park Estates Phase 4 Major Subdivision Preliminary Plat Extension, 1911-SPP-04. And this is Tammy Behrman. So we'd like to hear from you, Tammy.
Yeah, so staff noticed that we had a preliminary plat that was about ready to expire. So we reached out to the developer to see if they wanted to extend this under the subdivision control ordinance, which is 854-7K. You can see that language down there in the bottom right corner. And this does make this an administrative process where they just come here, we review the preliminary plat and make sure that it's something that we don't want to expire. In this case, staff would like to see this move forward and be extended. So a little bit of history on this is it is the Highland Park Estates Phase 5 preliminary plat. This was reapproved at one point by the Plan Commission on December 16th, 2019. And it had previously expired at one point with Phase 4 as well. So December 16th, it was renewed as a new preliminary plat. Phase 4 has actually gone through the final platting process. And now we're still here with Phase 5, which contains 5 residential lots, about 230 feet of connection to North Hull Drive, which is in the Ellettsville jurisdiction, and then 1 lot that contains common area and bioretention. And so, we, as a part of this process, we realized like they would need to renew their grading permit because it will expire soon as well. And yeah, we would have them also reapprove, put forth a new kind of see where they're at with the build out of Phase 5 and put together another financial guarantee and subdivision improvement agreement. And so staff is recommending that we, forward this with, approve this 2-year extension. I did include in the packet the results letter that listed some of those conditions of approval. Most of those have been completed, I believe. And I think there was one that wasn't quite done, but it would have to be completed before they could record Phase 5 final plat. So that's kind of where we're at in the process.
Thank you, Tammy. Is there any questions for Tammy from members of the Plan Commission? Mr. Pittsford and then Commissioner Thomas.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get to unmute. It's not so much a question as I just kind of wanted to weigh in. This is an area that is prime for intense development. Just to the west of this, there is a whole nother development going in that's been approved by the town of Ellettsville. This extension is extremely appropriate. There should be an opportunity for county and town to work together on this, and hopefully some manner of leverage will be applied so that we get the kind of connectivity that we need. The development to the west is going to create a tremendous traffic burden. And I'm not going to comment on whether or not that's a oversight or, farsighted. It doesn't matter. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that putting the brakes on this and looking at this entire area of development is appropriate at this time. And I will add a question, Jackie or Larry, either one. You're familiar with the development west of this. Would you agree with that statement that slowing things down in this area temporarily is not a bad thing? Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. I'm going to allow Mr. Wilson or Ms. Nestor Jelen to answer Mr. Pittsford's questions before going to Commissioner Thomas.
Well,
Sure.
Jerry, I think you're referring to the the lot that's west of Centennial, and that will only have access off of State Road 46.
That
It
is
won't-
correct, and it will only have right turn. It will not have left turn capacity. That creates a situation. I won't define it further than just saying that it creates a situation, but it definitely is a traffic situation that is going to have to be addressed, and adding pressure at Centennial with this development being built out immediately because of their statutory requirements is a bad idea. Would you agree?
I see.
Are you-
I mean,
are you-
Larry, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Jerry, are you suggesting we not approve phase 5 because of what Ellisville's doing to the west?
Oh, absolutely not. But
I think
offering that,
this actually will be essential because it actually connects into the northern subdivisions that are already developed.
right, but my
Again,
understanding was this was an extension, Larry. So this is just kind of pumping the brakes on things a little bit. Did I
Well,
miss something?
yeah, what happens is the subdivision actually expires in December unless it's extended. It's ongoing. They're working on it. They're probably going to complete it as fast as they can. However, as you can see, the construction's ongoing. That's from 2020. That's on the screen now. So again, I don't understand the theory of like having high density development with a right turn only out of onto 46, because all the cars are either going to have to go and turn around or go up and go through the neighborhoods to get out on Centennial or some other street. So it is, yeah, it's out of our control.
Right,
but I think
I'm going to interrupt
this
just
will-
for a second.
okay.
Isn't that whole drive connection in litigation right now? I don't think that's a certainty, is it?
I don't know the connection. I don't know the status of that litigation.
This
I
is
do
it.
know
Well,
that.
Is there litigation?
There's litigation off of Centennial, Jerry.
Okay, that's
Can
the
you
one-
see the
I'm
elevate
sorry, that's
map?
what I was thinking about.
Okay, the whole drive is what we're discussing right now is a connection
Okay.
point in this
Right,
phase.
I was right. But I can see where this might relieve a little bit of pressure immediately. But I just look at it as an opportunity to kind of, if we slow it down, if we don't force them to go forward immediately with what they have, there's an opportunity to extend that Ashbrook Lane in an appropriate manner that will allow the western property to have access to Centennial Drive through some cooperative measures. So if you go back right there, exactly, you see where Ashbrook Lane terminates in the western property that's under Ellisville's jurisdiction. There seems to be an opportunity to turn that north and run that into Centennial so that we could alleviate that pressure. I realize it's a stretch. It's not a certainty, but if we move forward with this and say, okay, all is done, I don't know. I may be grasping at straws, but I am, as somebody who lives in Bean Blossom Township and traverses Richland Township every time I go to Bloomington, this seems fraught with danger to me. So that was my only point. And if I'm totally off base, I'll do the Jim Stainbrook and say, sorry, but sorry, Jim, but that, sometimes I ask questions and I don't actually know the answer to.
Thank you,
Jerry,
Mr. Pittsburgh.
Jerry, I think the complication is that unless we renew this phase or extend the phase, the plat actually expires for this phase, and they would have to go through the preliminary plat approval again.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
I don't see that as a gain, Larry. I think letting this expire and then saying, go back to square one is going to help our position in it. That's all I was saying.
So thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Commissioner Thomas and then Mr. Garatas.
Yeah, to Jerry's point, I wonder if is there a way to do an extension with an additional condition and then postpone this to our December work session once we get some input from Highway and have them work with the developer. I'm just throwing that out there as an option. The other thing, what I wanted to ask about, I wanted to ask Ms. Thetonia if she would be willing to talk about stormwater issues on this property in the previous phases.
Hi, Julie. Sure. This is Kelsey. So I personally have not been on the Highland Park Estates project in about 2 months now. Connie Griffin, she left her position with the county in October. So I do apologize. I don't have the most up-to-date information on this site. We've been a bit busy, but I know that we did have some issues with Highland Park Estates this summer. It was just a back and forth stormwater inspection situation where, we gave them corrective actions, did follow-up inspections, and there was just one thing after another. They were very easy to communicate with and very responsive. It was just, they just had a lot going on that site and a lot of stormwater concerns that come along with these types of development, especially when you do mass grading, slow development of the lots, and just have a lot of materials and other types of things to manage. So there are drainage concerns. This is in the Jackson Creek watershed. I do have a concern about a possible connection from Centennial Drive west to the development in Ellettsville, because that is basically the whole ravine that drains this part of the subdivision. That's a very low spot, and that'll require some significant engineering to make that a safe crossing. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that as well. I'm watching that closely. So to me, the connection on North Cole Drive, I haven't looked at it closely myself. I've been to that part of the development. It's like I said, it's been a few months and it was not in this context, but that is actually on a ridge. So it doesn't require me to get an engineer to fill in a stream. So, but I did want to just make you aware of the issues we did have with some of the stormwater permit compliance this summer for the subdivision. So happy to answer any questions.
Margaret, you're on mute.
Julie, is that it?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Garatas?
Yeah, first off, Jerry, I'm not going to give you the microphone. I just want you to answer your question, okay? My question is, did you say that you would be in favor of a pause on this?
Yes.
I think you cut out. You would be in favor to pause this and hold up the extension?
Yes. And if I can be concise, I'll just tell you that our opportunity, if we make this a go or no go, the developer is going to go because the market is strong and the opportunity is there. If we don't pump the brakes on this, they're going to do it. And then we reduce our likelihood of having an opportunity to make that connection to Ashbrook over to Centennial. And I'll lower my hand now.
Okay, would you zoom that back in, Jackie, if you would, please? Back out just a shimmy. Okay, and maybe, so the only connectivity that looks to me that goes to Centennial is where Kelsey pointed out, right? Yes, thank you. And I'm not going to get caught up in what Ellettsville's got out there. I mean, I'll just say I think staff did a great job. I appreciate them. If the public ever wonders if staff is keeping an eye on things like this proves that they are. So I commend them for reaching out to the developer, the developer's representative, whoever it was. First off, second off, there's always these areas that we rub up against just different jurisdictions, whether it's the city of Bloomington, town of Ellettsville, wherever, a different county. But I'm inclined to keep this moving. We've looked at this and looked at this and looked at this. I don't know what this plan to the west through Elksville looks like if they show connection. I even hate to ask the question. Does anybody know if they show a connection to that stub there where Jackie's got the mouse?
Not at this time, Bernie. They don't have it shown, and it would require a permit through the county.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess my thought is I would be inclined to just to continue this. We've already discussed this ad infinitum, and then the town of Ellisville has a petition that came in during, after, whatever. And, you know, I think that this is a plan that we've thought out, and I think that there were some changes that the developer made based on those. And I just think we keep it going and not have them have to go through the whole preliminary plat process again, and keep this as a portion of what they've already got started. So, but the public may change my mind, or other planning commission members, but that's where I'm at now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Mr. Enright Randolph.
I guess my questions kind of go with some of the drainage concern in this area. I think it was discussed in earlier phasing that some of the sewer drains were inadequate. I recall that discussion taking place. So I just wanted to point that out for Kelsey. Also, I do think our release rates have changed in a critical drainage way since we looked at this last as well. So if we continue this as recommended, do they have to come and meet those new compliances with our stormwater and drainage ordinances?
Yeah, just to clarify, Tron, and then Kelsey, if you can answer. When you say continue, do you mean extend, approve an extension? Okay.
Yes.
Kelsey, if they lapse this approval for the last phase, would you hold them to the critical drainage standard release rates if they come back through for a new approval?
No. I'm saying if we extend it, we have to comply with the new release rates. So I think it's more of a planning or a day question there. Maybe a Larry.
If you extend it, Tron, we wouldn't, that it would just be continued as it was already approved.
Okay, so thank you. And so then I was going to make the point. So if we do have them go through the process, we can make them comply to our new rates, but I don't know how significant that would be. I'd be curious to know, what some of, what some of the ordinance that have changed since this was first approved, and if they had to go through it and we didn't extend it, what they would then have to comply to. I don't think there would be too many differences, but I know there's a couple things like the release rate and our critical drainage ways, and I'm not sure if there would be anything else much after that, but thank you.
So Mr. Pittsford and then Commissioner Thomas.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Margaret. A couple of things just kind of came up. Jackie, can you go back to the topo map or the satellite image? Because I have a question. Okay. Just to the south of Emma Drive, I see two red lines that almost look like an easement. You see the house? where the driveway lines up with Emma Drive? Go down, right there. Go straight down. A little farther. You're almost there. Okay, back up. I'm pointing at my screen at home, just so you know. Go up just one more lot. No, go back to the west. Look at the intersection of Emma Drive and Centennial. That's the key part that I want to look at. Okay, exactly, just south. You see the red lines? Is this an easement? Right there where you are. Is that an easement?
Yes.
Okay, so we have an existing easement.
Yes.
Okay,
But-
so that tells me the development to the west has a current easement to get to Centennial Drive. Is that correct?
I don't know that this is what it was intended for. A larger development to the west or
I totally understand that, but I see an easement and I see a property in development.
Mhm.
And I see an opportunity for petitioner to have an opportunity, Tron, to do right by current drainage standards in exchange for the better common good, which obviously is an appeal that may fall on deaf ears. But if we tell them it's go or no go, I'm telling you, I feel like they're going to go. So this is an opportunity to re-examine our options and maybe partner with the town of Ellettsville and make sure this development to the west does not create a traffic hazard that we will all regret. And that's, I'm going to just leave it at that because I don't want to preach. Y'all don't want to hear it and I won't do it.
Okay, Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, thank you. I have a quick question first for Dave Schilling and then a comment. So Mr. Schilling,
Yes.
Is it possible to approve an extension with a
Protected at the back door.
Can you
say that again, Commissioner
Yeah,
Thomas? I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear.
Can an extension be approved with a new condition?
I think you can condition the extension.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'm wondering if, I know that we've got very busy highway and stormwater departments, but I'm wondering if we would entertain continuing this to our December administrative meeting and get some information from highway and stormwater to address the questions that Mr. Pittsford raised. I don't know if my colleagues would be interested in doing that and if highway and stormwater think that would be worthwhile.
If you make a motion, I'll second it.
Well, I want to get their input first and see if they think that would be worthwhile.
Do you want me to speak, Julie? It's Lisa.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, the only thing I was wondering if we've had any discussions with Ellettsville. I'm not aware of it on the highway part. Now, Paul could have been because he sits on some of these meetings that I don't. Maybe if we could let Paul comment if he's had any additional meetings on connectivity. I know it has been an issue in the past. I do know there is litigation going on. Again, and I couldn't agree with Jerry more. I wish there was a lot more communication between the entities, and it doesn't always seem to be the case. Paul, have you been on any discussions or meetings with Ellettsville that I'm not aware of?
He'll need to be promoted.
I'm sorry? Hello?
Yeah, Lisa, as far as I know, that easement between Centennial and going to the west is for drainage. It's not for set aside on for
No, it says
roadway or
ingress
anything.
egress. It says ingress egress. Bring it back up.
Yeah, there's no drainage easement. The drainage easement is on the Ellisville side, I think.
We can certainly,
Right, sorry, right there below lot 19. Go back to that other slide. Lot 19, it says ingress egress.
I think planning and highway have some concerns about encouraging this connection, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to have this at our December meeting to give us some time.
Yeah, I thought they were looking to connect a little farther south at the drainage easement area.
I think I agree with Jackie. I think it would be good for the parties because it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty of what Paul believes was proposed originally and what is actually what we're seeing. So I agree totally that, and we're all for the connectivity. I just know there seems to be a lot of issues in this area for communication. So, but I'm more than willing to be a part of working with Jackie and Kelsey and Paul and planning's team on sitting down with Kevin or the developer and seeing where we need to go. Maybe Dave Schilling could be involved.
Okay.
Sorry.
You go ahead, please, Kelsey.
I was briefly in communication with Ellisville about this connection. This was just a few weeks ago because of some citizen concerns. Seeing the development happening to the west, they wanted to know what the status was, and they had no update for us. It's not currently on the table, and he knows to notify us if there is any movement on that. So I just wanted to let you know that I tried to look into it, but didn't receive any information. So,
thank you, Kelsey. So, Mr. Wilson and then Mr. Garatas.
I just wanted to comment that the subdivision along the west side there was done a long time ago. I'm not sure the developer even has any control over any of those lots right now. I don't know that, whether he does or not, and whether or not it's appropriate to like hold down a separate subdivision in order to try to retrofit access to the left. It's also unclear whether or not, even if it is an ingress egress easement, it benefits the property to the west. It may have been reserved to allow the developer of Centennial Drive to go to the left to develop that property, but not necessarily vice versa. I mean, it may not benefit the property to the left. So I guess I just have some concerns trying to slow down a project that's basically ongoing. We've received constant complaints from the individuals to the north in the existing houses that they can't get to Centennial Drive. And they have concerns with school buses, they have concerns with emergency services. They are waiting for this subdivision phase to be completed and the roads accepted to allow them to get out. And so I do have concerns about slowing it down because we're really increasing the burden of all those people who are waiting. And right now, there's no real way to access Centennial from all of those areas to the north and to the west until this is complete and we actually connect back down into Emma Drive, because the one connection at the end of Centennial, I believe, is still in litigation. So until we finish this phase, there is no connectivity at all. Once they do that, there will be a way for individuals to make their way through the neighborhoods in Ellettsville and down, out, and over through Emma Court and down Centennial. It's not a great design from a high transportation planning standpoint, but it will provide at least emergency access and access for school buses and so on. But
You're
we
trading
have
short-term gain, Bernie or Larry. Short-term gain, not good. Short-term gain is not good here.
Well, Jerry, I'm sorry, this should have been done 30 years ago when Centennial went through. And right now we've got all those people to the north that have no way out.
Larry, every problem in Ellisville has dust on it. And you can't say it should have been done 30 years ago and then do wrong again and create another 30-year problem. And I'm sorry for interjecting, Madam President, but I'm tired of dealing with these things where people take the short-term easy route and then don't address long-term solutions.
Well, I tend to agree with you, Mr. Pittsford, that we do need to have a vision. We do need to have a plan. We have to protect the safety and the security of our community members. And it's pivotal times like this that have the potential to make a transformative difference. But that being said, Mr. Garatas, and then Ms. Ridge, and then Mr. Enright. Randolph.
Yeah, the reason why I raised my hand is I was going to offer to Julie an answer to her question. As long as extending this to, and I haven't looked at my calendar, but my guess is I plan on being at the administrative meeting in December. I could support continuing this to December. But the reservation I have in these certain circumstances, whether we hold the power or the authority, whatever definition that you want to use, to cause them to do something different after we have beat this subdivision to death as a commission and as a staff and everybody up and down, the neighbors, everybody. I really have a hard time for this reason forcing other things on them because something was missed, something maybe not missed. I think Larry answered my question with whether or not even the petitioners have control over that ingress egress easement south of lot 19. That's another complication, but I'm all for the dialogue to have the discussion. And even if that connection was made, whether we force it or not, there's nothing to say that it's still not going to be a right-hand move out of the Ellisville development onto State Route 46. That still may be necessary. I think Mr. Wilson's point about the connectivity that's gained as this neighborhood goes north, and Ribbon Lane, yeah, Jerry, I see that connection. There will be something there, and I don't see that as kicking the can down the road. I think with this project and this part of the jurisdiction and all the work that's been done on it, I think that all those points deserve some have merit as far as not going too far back and twisting the arm of the developer to change it again. So that's it. I'd be up for administrative meeting, but I'd like to see this be extended only because I don't want to see this go back through another preliminary plat process. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Garatas. Ms. Ridge?
So I guess after, Kelsey said that she had talked to Ellisville even in the last couple of weeks, and that's great. And I think that's another reason why I think it would be great to have a meeting with, if it is just Ellisville, to voice the county's concerns and get it on record of what the county concerns are. I have been dealing with this connectivity with the developers to the north since 2016 of just that little connection. The last I heard that the litigation trial date is in January. And also I did receive a complaint that the connection at the end of Centennial Drive has been built, that it is open to the traffic, that the cut has been made through the curb and going to the north of that subdivision while it's under litigation. I hate to open a can of worms and get involved in it. I think we've been involved in it now for at least 5 years for this connectivity. I think it would be better to focus too on the traffic to the west that's going to be generated to get that connection, because I just see the Highland Park and the north could go on for a little while longer if it doesn't go to the courts in January as previously scheduled. But I don't want to keep keep it going, but I think it would be great to meet with Ellisville and if it is stagnant right now, at least let them hear our concerns, either from an engineering point of what our concerns are with the connectivity in this area.
Thank you, Ms. Ridge. That seems to me to be important as well. Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yeah, I think this dialogue is very important. And also, there's a lot of technical issues here, and I think we really need some clarity of what kind of access or ability do they have to even use the easement that we're discussing currently, and exactly what are we asking this petitioner developer to do if we condition something to the extension. Are we asking them to build out that connection? Because obviously we can't ask them to go and build infrastructure on someone else's property. So one, they would have to have permission to use that ingress egress. I mean, could I get some clarification of what exactly would be asking the petitioner to do if we condition things, or even if we don't condition things to the extension and we have them go through the whole process again? Are we even able to have them address that connection with the easement? I mean, that really needs to be clarified, because we might be just, discussing something that might be pretty impossible to do. But could I get some clarification of exactly, and Jerry, maybe you could maybe expand on that. What would we ask the petitioner to do to connect that? Or are we just using this as a platform to have a discussion?
Well, Tron, that's a good question. What I'm suggesting is pumping the brakes on this allows the petitioner to have that opportunity to discuss how best to address the higher good of making that connectivity to the Ellisville development to the west. And to the extent that we are able to encourage them to work with the developer and Ellisville Planning to make sure that the only in and out of that western development under the auspices of the town of Ellisville Planning is not restricted to a westward turn every time they leave that development, because it's going to create turnaround issues. And if somebody wants to go east, they're going to go down and turn around and then cross 2 lanes of traffic in order to head east. Any opportunity we have to slow this down and create a conversation is worth taking the chance.
Well, I have my hand raised, and it's just to, I do remember when we met about, I believe, the development that's slightly to the west there, that there were residents who came and appeared before us, and they spoke very, very matter-of-factly about the concerns for the safety of their children and their pets. And I really do think that this might be a time where we should go to Ellisville and meet with the people in the neighborhood. There's nothing like the intelligence on the ground. And I also am persuaded by Mr. Pittsford that if this expires, then it gives us leverage to maybe do something a little bit better for the people who have to live with it day to day. That's my feeling about that. But that being said, I'd like to hear from anybody else who'd like to speak, and then from the public, and then we can come back to us and take a vote. Mr. Stainbrook?
Well, a question, Margaret. So if we vote, are we going to vote tonight, or are we going to wait until the 7th and hear further information?
This is under the administrative section, and the only thing under consideration is whether or not we extend, we vote to extend what has already been approved.
Okay, so.
And if we don't extend it, it will expire.
Yeah.
And then once it expires, they have to come before us again.
Yes, and that's what I want to make sure that I understand. In the context of your concerns, if it were not extended, then there would be opportunity for this interaction as the petitioner or the developer as they return. And then that's, Margaret, pardon me, but that's consistent with what Jerry's trying to do here. That is that it not be extended.
Is my understanding, and Mr. Pittsford can speak better about that himself because his hand is raised, and then Commissioner Thomas has something to say as well. So Mr. Pittsford and then Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you kind of reframe Jim's question for me, please?
Well, I believe that Mr. Stainbrook was requesting clarification of the motive for allowing this to expire.
Okay.
And the motive is to allow for a further deliberation about a possible better design.
Okay, I got you. So really the concern is if we don't give the extension, it's a go or no go order. And I don't see a developer willing to be in the no-go mode right now when the market and the demand is so high. So if we don't allow the extension, I think we'll get what we got with no opportunity for any revision. And then the reason I had my hand raised, and I'm just going to throw this out there, not for discussion, is for information only. I am the assistant principal at Edgewood Primary School. Our current enrollment is 644 students in a building designed for 650. Look at this development. Who's buying there? What school do they attend? What age group of children are you going to see coming out of these houses and getting in buses? Any delay serves many, many opportunities.
Those are very convincing points from somebody whose boots are on the ground. So I appreciate that, Mr. Pittsford. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, just to address Jim's question, thank you for that, Jim. The motion I would make or would entertain would be to extend this consideration to our administrative meeting, which is before this expires. So it wouldn't necessarily mean that this petition, that they're going to lose this opportunity, but it certainly lights a fire and it says that's our last chance. It moves us down the road a little bit.
So Commissioner Thomas, to be clear, is saying, look, it's going to expire anyway if we allow it to expire, but by continuing it to the admin meeting, we give an opportunity for negotiation that could occur before that time. And if it doesn't occur, we still have the opportunity to allow it to expire. Is that correct, Commissioner Thomas?
Right, we can consider it before the expiration date, which means we can still vote it up or down at our December admin meeting. And we still have the opportunity to prevent it from expiring or to allow it to expire, but at least we'll have more information.
I have just an additional question. Is it possible for us to go and meet with the neighbors in the neighborhood before that admin meeting to talk to people? I mean, I believe in the beauty of multiple minds.
It would have to be advertised if there was a majority.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I just want to put that out there. And okay, so we've got really a heavy burden on this one from a plan commission perspective. I guess this is where, we make or break on our jobs as far as our advisory role and what we're able to do to help the community become better, so I'd like to go to the public now and then come back to us for a possible motion. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this item? So Jackie, let me
I
know.
don't see anyone.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this proposal? Let me know that. And coming back to us, I'd just like, the question is, do we boot it to our admin meeting or do we let it, Julie, Commissioner Thomas, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we continue SPP 21-6, an extension of 1911 SPP 04 on the 4300 block of North Emma Drive. Continue it to our December administrative meeting in order to get more information from highway and stormwater and hopefully have a conversation with Ellisville.
Second.
And Madam President, I would just like some clarification. Does that
Yes.
mean at our admin, we'll be treating this as like a regular session item and we will allow public comment and the petitioner a chance to speak?
At the end of this meeting, we would have to continue our meeting
Well, I guess
instead of
I would
adjourn.
like to make a motion if possible, but I hate to amend it. I second it. So since I was educated really nicely by Mr. Stainbrook in the past, I would like to walk back my second and then I can offer a friendly amendment. So I'm going to walk back my second right now and leave that up to the other two that seconded it. So.
Okay, now, Commissioner Thomas, your hand is raised. Is that for an additional comment or?
No, sorry.
Okay, now who else seconded?
I seconded.
Okay, so Mr. McKim seconded Commissioner Thomas's motion.
And I would like to offer hopefully a friendly amendment where we allow the petitioner and the public to speak to this case at our admin meeting, since we've been trying to refrain from that since it's not a public hearing. But I do think in the town of Ellisville, I do think it's really important that we open this up to as a discussion because it might bear fruit and maybe we can't accomplish it during this particular petition, but maybe it opens it up for a future possibility to have that connectivity. So that is my amendment.
Well, thank you. And as chair of the committee, I would just say that at the end of this meeting, I would be grateful if someone would continue the meeting until our admin meeting so that we can open this up for discussion. So I would beg of you to do that. So the motion has been made and seconded, and Mr. Wilson, given that, other than that, Mr. Wilson.
Wait, before you call the roll, I'm a little confused. Are we amending this motion so that only this case can be considered for public comment at our administrative meeting?
No.
Or are we continuing the whole meeting tonight?
I would suggest that we continue the whole meeting tonight with this item on the agenda. I mean, this will be the only, that's a good question. I'm deep in the administrative problem.
I don't think it's necessary to continue the meeting. If we have continued an item, then the item appears on the next agenda.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Right, and then it would be treated just as it was at this meeting, correct?
Yep. And we'll vote on it and we'll take public comment.
And
Okay. So this one item does not require a full open meeting. We are only continuing this item under the conditions of an open public meeting for comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying, Mr. Pittsford, and all of the group minds that made that a much better result. So thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Do we need a roll call vote or can we do this by acclamation?
I move the vote by acclamation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? So it's unanimous that that the motion is approved unanimously. Okay, great. We're moving on now to this PUO-21-3 Heritage Creek Outline Plan Amendment. This is the final hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm sorry.
I just said yes, sorry, Margaret, go ahead.
Okay, and so this concerns 5.93 acres in Harrodsburg. So would you please, Jackie, go ahead and give us an update on this?
Margaret, pardon me, I don't mean to be rude, Jackie, but I'm not going to turn off the computer because then that's awkward to get back. But Jackie, I won't vote. I mean, I recuse myself, the same Margaret, but I'm not leaving the room. I'm
okay.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll go ahead and go over the petition request. So this is an outline plan amendment that would allow for 9 duplexes and 1 innkeeper unit, so 19 units total. The petitioner has submitted some amended items in the packet that I'll just pull up, that anything in red is updated since the last time you've seen this. So there's been quite a bit of updates since the last admin meeting. So I just want to run through some of those updates and give you a little bit of background. So currently the property is zone plan unit development, but the outline plan for that was to allow for quadplex developments, and that was voted to be expired. So this outline plan amendment, if approved, would take place of that prior outline plan. But if it is denied, then it would need to actually be expired out of a PUD and rezoned to a county, another county zone. So the purpose obviously is to develop this lot because now they're ready to do so. Just quickly updating you that the comprehensive plan has this as a designated community. This is in the town of Harrodsburg, location here right off of Harrodsburg Road and near West Popcorn. And the site has been partially built out. There was an as-built submitted in the packet. There are there's infrastructure installed on this site that I'll get to site photos to in a second. And then, as I mentioned, it's a PUD that's already zoned as such. In this outline plan amendment, they're making it clear that the northern parcel would be for the development and the southern parcel would actually be committed to be only the open space, so exceeding the 25% open space. I do want to go over some photos since this is a little bit of an unusual case in that it's been partially built out since it was approved in 2001 and then later in 2005, but never developed. So here are some site photos where you're looking at the proposed Buffalo Trace Road, as they call it in the proposal. And then also on this side of the screen, they're proposing a sidewalk that would actually connect through an easement that would eventually get to Popcorn Road. They do have infrastructure installed, storm drains, as well as retention ponds in the back. And so part of this discussion of widening the road, some of the concern there is that there's partially built out infrastructure under prior understanding or prior approval, but because there was no actual building permits pulled and nothing was actually developed in terms of housing structures, then the time has lapsed and we're reviewing this again for today's standards. So another view here at the end of the proposed Buffalo Trace is where they would have the hammerhead that they've put together. And then on the right-hand side is the stormwater facilities. And I have in the packet a photo from one of the storm events in June showing that this is still appears to be visually working. But one of the things that is in the outline plan that was recommended by the stormwater and MS4 coordinator is that this would actually go through drainage board review for any changes that might need to happen to come up to today's standards. So I want to, before I get to the recommendation, go over a little bit in depth some of the differences between this packet that you're seeing here and what we've seen previously. So in the beginning, I'll go over a little bit of Q&A of the last conditions that were made. So the petitioner has made some substantial edits, and we had asked for a more comprehensive list of parking, landscaping, signage uses. The petitioner has submitted a way more detailed outline plan. One of the last remaining concerns that you'll see above is in regards to the street width and the parking plan. So the landscaping requirement, they are agreeing to most of the plantings that staff has requested. And in all, it's about comparative to what Chapter 830 would require in its current configuration. The applicant is not willing, as I mentioned before, to meet the required 26 foot of pavement, but they are able to comply with 24 feet. So the main concern that we have regarding that is that there's not on-street parking on both sides. And that leads potentially for visitors to have limited space parking for, street parking won't be allowed. So then where else are they going to be parking is a concern of highway and planning. Other considerations that were prior conditions have been met. The only other issue regarding cul-de-sac, this is something that's in the subdivision control and typically something that the planning department requires is cul-de-sac design. Hammerheads are more so for temporary turnarounds. And since this is a permanent turnaround, we did request that this become a cul-de-sac. However, the petitioner does not agree to this. And they also made note that historically they did have a cul-de-sac at their prior design in 2001, but were asked to change that to a hammerhead in a subsequent development plan approved in 2005, and they don't want to change it back at this point. And then the petitioner is also asking for 4 phases. So let me go down to the exhibits for just a second. This is the proposed, or I guess schematic development plan. It would be a subsequent submission after outline plan approval. If there is outline plan approval, they would submit a development plan for staff review and approval. So here is the illustration of their development plan, and their outline plan appears to be meeting these requirements. You will note that some of the outline plan requirements, such as setbacks, may appear to be a little bit closer than what they have noted, but they are leaving 17 feet as confirmed by the engineer between the edge of the easement to the garage in all cases. And sometimes it's more space than that to allow for vehicles to park in the garage without hanging over the sidewalk area. And then scrolling down a little bit to the phasing plan. So the petitioner is wishing to split this into 4 phases. The first phase would be the very western portion of the site and include the roadway and as well as the stormwater facilities. And then as they go along, phase 2 would be on the north side and complete that, and then phase 3 and phase 4, and they're stair stepping those phases so that once one is complete, the next one is beginning. And then this was their parking exhibit. Planning staff is acknowledging that there are 2-car garages with each unit, but we also have to factor into account that not all garage spaces are always used for storage of vehicles. Sometimes it could be storage of materials or residential things. So it's not always a guarantee that it's a space for a vehicle. So if there's anything else? No, I think that's what I wanted to cover. So staff is recommending denial due to the street width requirement. But in the event that the Plan Commission does want to send a positive recommendation to the county commissioners, then we would recommend that the outline plan meet the conditions specified below so that the roadway meet the manual for construction with and adjacent to Monroe County right-of-way for the following: the road width be 26 feet of pavement, the roadway approach to Harrisburg flare out in accordance with county design standards, the curb and gutter shall be used in the turnaround area to add curb and gutter to the turnaround area, replace 6 feet sidewalk on the south side of the road with a 4-foot sidewalk and 2-foot grass strip, and that the development meet the subdivision control standards, that a cul-de-sac construction be designed in lieu of a hammerhead design. So are there any questions?
Mr. McKim?
Yes, thank you very much. I guess I'm really having trouble understanding the recommendation here. So the denial recommendation is because the road width is 24 feet rather than 26 feet.
Correct. Primarily, yeah.
But yet you're then saying, okay, if we go ahead and approve it anyway at 24 feet, we should make the requirement that it be 26 feet. I don't really get the logic there.
I think, Jeff, we wanted to, sometimes we send a positive recommendation with conditions, and we wanted to communicate effectively that we don't feel that the 26 feet is negotiable. So it's either a denial or that it's a condition.
Okay, but why? Okay, but my understanding is they can't make the road width 26 feet, right? Isn't it because there's already existing infrastructure that would be in the way?
They could, it would involve additional expense to move it.
To move infrastructure that's otherwise perfectly good and functional, or could be functional.
Could be functional, yes.
Okay.
I believe, I'm not sure, they did an as-built. If their engineer is on and you want to ask the question of functionality, that might be good for them, but I'm not sure I can answer exactly to the exact functionality of it, but yes, it appears to be in functional.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other members of the Plan Commission who have questions for staff? I don't see any. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Did fire department review the hammerhead versus cul-de-sac?
Good question. It's been a while since we had this petition start up. I want to look back at my notes. I know that the engineer was wanting to do a schematic showing that they could turn around, but that's a good question. I will get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions from members of the Plan Commission for staff, I'd like to turn to the petitioner or the petitioner's representative and have them speak to us.
I'm going to go ahead and promote the petitioners really quick.
And
this is Daniel with Bynum Faneuil. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
With me tonight is Dennis Miller.
Sorry, Daniel. I accidentally pressed mute on you for some reason. Sorry.
Don't do that again, Jackie, please. Just kidding. I'm here with Dennis Miller, who's representing the ownership group. And then also with us, I believe, is Mike Carmen on the line. I believe he's here with any other questions you have. Let me just quickly speak to a couple of the concerns that have already been brought up. It's not that we are unwilling to move infrastructure. It just creates a hardship on the project that has already been started. So this was approved years ago with that road design. And so we just wanted to continue with the project that had been started with that approved design by the county years ago. We are proposing that the 24 feet rather than the 26 feet. The only reason for the 24 feet is because that has the infrastructure already in for that. And then we would allow no on-street parking because of the 24-foot. You only get 2 more feet is what the highway department is asking for. And they're saying that then you get on-street parking. We don't see that as a good trade-off. But however, we're not saying we are unwilling to do that. That is the reason why we have kept it where it's at and making a case for that because of just the hardship that would put on the project. But it's not that there'd be an unwillingness to do so. I think it's been said before, but this project has a lot of the infrastructure, including utilities otherwise. So that's why we'd like to kind of keep with the same nature of the approved design from years ago. We've added over the last, I think, gosh, it's been 6 months or so now, working back and forth with the planning department to try to get something that's provable. And our understanding, the only piece that was a non-negotiable was the width of the street. I do have an exhibit, I guess I didn't share it with the planning department, on a fire truck can navigate. That was the reason for having the hammerhead at the end rather than a cul-de-sac. And the reason for a hammerhead is it just provided the necessary space to do so at the end. It's going to be seldomly used by a fire truck, obviously. It'd be more often used by a delivery truck and a garbage truck. So that I can show anyone who needs that, but a 40 or 45 foot long fire truck navigates that hammerhead at the end, and then you get less impervious pavement that you don't need with a cul-de-sac design at the end there. And we have no issue with providing the curb and gutter, around that as well. And with me is Dennis Miller again and Mike Carmen. I don't know if they want to speak, but that was just wanted to answer a couple questions I've heard already.
Okay, Mr. Carmen, would you like to speak?
I do not see Mr. Carmen on the call, but I do see Dennis and Steve, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, Jackie, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to add additionally with Dan, the description about the entrance and how we've negotiated the entrance there as you pull in off of Harrodsburg Road with the current stormwater catch basin and guttering there. I think if I remember correctly, Dan, wasn't that entrance widened to 36 feet?
We haven't updated on the plans yet, but we have given indication that we're okay with that. And the only other pieces that was the widening just because the infrastructure in place within the site. So that's correct that we're okay with what the highway department was wanting out there connecting actually to Harrodsburg Road.
So that gives a lot better egress there as you turn in.
Okay. Is there any further comment from the petitioner or the petitioner's representative?
The only other thing I would add is we showed that diagram of having the parking. So you'd have enough driveway for 2 cars in the garage and 2 cars out in the driveway. And we're showing that there wouldn't be any, so there wouldn't be congestion out in the street. Having, just an additional 2 more feet, I don't know, and adding cars on the street, just, it might feel a little bit congested when you drive in there. So that's why we're also staying at that. But the main reason, of course, is to, infrastructure being in place as stated before.
Okay, thank you. So I turn now to members of the public. And if there are members of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone if you're calling in. Do you see anyone, Jackie? Okay. Are there members of the public who are here who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand or press *9 on your telephone if you're dialing in. Okay, I bring it back to the members of the Plan Commission, Mr. McKim. And then Ms.
Yes,
Owen.
Thank you very much. I am interested in what my colleagues on the Plan Commission have to say about this, but I will say that just based on everything I've heard so far, I don't think the case has been made that the road width of 26 feet is necessary. I'm certainly inclined to support it at 24. And also, I haven't really heard a good argument for why hammerhead design is problematic in this case. So I'm interested in hearing if there is a good argument. But otherwise, my inclination would be to support approval of this without the requirement for 26 feet and also without the requirement for the cul-de-sac.
Okay, Ms. Owens, and then Mr. Garatas.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, I have two comments. The first one being that when your house is on fire, you want that fire engine to be able to turn around just as quickly as it can. And that's the reason to have appropriate entrance, a cul-de-sac if possible, and so forth. When you're the one in those shoes, then you understand it a little bit better that every minute counts. But otherwise, I like to listen to staff. They work hard and they say that it needs to be 26 feet. So I tend to go with that until I hear something that convinces me it should not be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Mr. Bernie Garatas.
Couple questions for the petitioner's representative or staff, it doesn't matter. Is the roadway 28 feet then back of curb to back of curb?
This is Daniel again with Bynum Faneuil. That's correct.
So it's 28 back of curb. And it looked like from those inlets that you're using instead of standard curb inlets with chair back curb, you're using roll curb and gutter. And you've got inlets to match that. Is that correct?
That is correct. Dennis, if you're still on the line, can you confirm that their rolled curb that are currently out there is constructed now?
Yes, that is correct. They're rolled curb.
Okay, so those are a little bit more forgiving for wheel movements and tire movements if for some reason that extra foot on each side is necessary. I know that Monroe County, which we've got very good standards, requires that. There's been instances where it's not been required, and sometimes those narrower roads do help with the traffic calming. So I'm with Jeff on this. I think that unless there's just some harsh reason why, I think the 28 back to back works with the roll curb and gutter. The other question I've got on the cul-de-sac, and this is to staff, if a cul-de-sac is installed on that west side, Jackie, will that require the back of that curb to be 50 feet off the property line?
So that is a subdivision control standard. This isn't going to be a subdivision, so it's, I think, a little bit less stringent. But Larry, if you have another interpretation, I think they're showing right now. This is showing about 10 feet off of the setback. No, yeah. Daniel, do you know if this setback right now is about 10 feet from the hammerhead to the property line?
That's correct.
Okay. Larry, did you want to weigh in on the proximity?
Yeah, it would be a highway standard rather than a subdivision standard as far as the size and the location of the cul-de-sac. And also the road width is a highway standard as well. So if Paul would like to comment on it, I mean, I think we've expressed concerns with the concept that two-car garages provide the equivalent of off-street parking, given that sometimes people use their garages for other than storing cars in them.
Yeah,
And
also Larry, if
Paul, go ahead.
if a resident has a party or something and they've got 8 to 10 visitors and they're all driving their cars, where are they going to park? Are they going to park on top of the sidewalks, in yards, on Harrodsburg Road? That's the reason why we recommend the 26-foot pavement width, so we can accommodate on-street parking to allow for visitor parking at these duplexes.
or in the Hammerhead.
Or they'll end up parking in the Hammerhead if there's nowhere else to park. So that's why we have the requirement, the 26-foot pavement plus the 30-foot back-to-back, is to allow for on-street parking to accommodate visitors. And it still allows traffic to pass between the parked vehicles on both sides if needed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So if the cul-de-sac is required, I mean, the Hammerhead is an engineered design. They're effective and they work. I don't know, maybe I missed it. I don't know if the highway department is recommending that the cul-de-sac be installed, but the Hammerhead is a useful tool and it can actually be an easier way to turn large vehicles around without having to pull up in people's driveways that may be full of cars because the garages are full of people's personal belongings. So I would just want to make sure that we weren't backing the petitioner in a corner by saying it's going to be a cul-de-sac, and then the end of the cul-de-sac has got to be 50 feet off the property line, and then all of a sudden they're having to shift all the buildings back, rearrange the site, and reconfigure everything. I'm okay with the Hammerhead, and frankly, I'm okay with the 28 back-to-back. But I just want to make sure we're not backing them into a well here that they can't get out of.
Thank you,
Now,
Mr.
the highway
Fair.
department is okay with the Hammerhead as long as it has curb and gutter, so vehicles aren't running off in the grass and making a mess, that type of thing.
Thanks, Paul.
But yeah, we do recommend the 30 feet back-to-back of curb, not the 28.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Satterley and Mr. Garatas. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah, I have two questions and I have a comment. The first question is for Jackie Nestor Jelen. Did you find your notes on the fire department? Sorry.
No, I was looking at OpenGov and I don't see the notes in there unless Daniel has something. I don't think that it's been double checked since before, so I'll look into that.
Okay, if we could, maybe we could make it a condition that fire department and school system both sign off on the design for the turnaround. That would be useful. I think that way we don't have to hold them up. The other question I have is if Ms. Tetonia is still on the call, which I believe she is, how she feels about this stormwater, the current infrastructure and the plan, and whether she's comfortable with this.
Hi, this is Kelsey. So I still have not personally inspected the infrastructure, but in general, I'm okay accepting previously installed infrastructure. If the design standards for the road will change, I'll work with them to get any new infrastructure into compliance, but I'm just sort of, I guess, waiting on that decision. But otherwise, I'm ready to inspect the already installed infrastructure like I would any other construction site.
Great, thank you. And my comment is I believe that the road width that the highway department recommends needs to be followed, because even though this is a private road, we have standards to keep. And although the standard was different before, this is one of the costs of delaying the project. Obviously having to come back to us and having to meet new standards, unfortunately. But I was really glad and heartened to hear the petitioner say they're willing to make these changes as needed. It's not that we want to add costs, but if these are our standards, these are our standards today. And that's unfortunately what I think we need to go with. So I would just ask that whoever makes the motion to include MCCSC and Monroe County Fire Protection District sign off on the turnaround. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Are there any other further questions or comments from members of the Plan Commission?
This is Daniel. I was just going to follow up with two things, but I can wait until if you were still talking.
Please do.
There were two comments made that I just wanted to address. As far as Kelsey review goes, we're happy to submit whatever she needs in terms of drainage calcs that support the current infrastructure. We haven't given that yet, just in the PUD phase, but we're confident that the existing infrastructure is designed with, the detention and stormwater treatment in mind. The other thing I wanted to mention, if you're making MCCSC, we don't mind making obviously the hammerhead turnaround at the end is for all kinds of vehicles that would, delivery trucks, garbage trucks more regularly than the possibility of the fire truck. We don't think the MCCSC, it's possible that they may say otherwise. I haven't talked to them. We think the MCCSC will pick kids up at the corner of Harrodsburg and Buffalo Trace and not come into the site. If you're going to make that as a condition, we were just wondering if you could put that in such a way that if they are going to pick them up at the road and not have them drive into site, like saying that a school bus would need to have that same type of turning maneuver back there if they're okay with picking them up at the corner.
Thank you, Daniel. Mr. Pittsford?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. To Daniel's point, I know that in RBB, and I don't doubt that MCCSC is any different, where there is a cul-de-sac, most school corporations now are deferring picking up students along that lane and requiring them to come to the nearest intersection to their cul-de-sac. It adds a tremendous amount of time to bus routes and it decreases safety significantly. So yeah, what he's saying is really spot on.
Just wait.
Thank you.
Mr. McKim? You're muted.
Sorry, my apologies. I was planning to make a motion, but I'll wait. I'll defer in case anybody else wants to speak.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? Lisa Ridge?
Hello. I want to concur with what Julie had stated. The county highway spent a lot of time on coming up and developing the new road standards after many years. To just put out there, I don't feel that the need is that it's needed to make this road to today's standards. I have to side with our engineer that this is why we met with all the engineers. That's why the new road standards were passed. That's why it was agreed upon when the new road standards were made, that would be what was followed. And I think sometimes we get into some problems of today when we didn't follow road standards in the past, and there wasn't a really good reason of not following those standards besides it's a cost to the developer. We built the standards because that's what we feel that what is best for today's public and for the safety of the residents and the motorists with on-street parking. So I commend Julie for speaking up on behalf of the road standards that took a lot of time with development in the county and bringing them to today's standards, and just ask that we follow them to the best that we can moving forward in county decisions.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? And if or make a motion? Mr. McKim?
All right, I guess I'll make a motion. Although I don't agree with the 26 feet of the road, it's clearly that's the direction it's going to have to go to move forward. So in the matter of PUO-21-3, Heritage Creek Plan Unit Development Outline Plan Amendment 2, I move we forward to the Board of Commissioners with this petition with a positive recommendation with the following conditions. Roadway meet the manual for construction within and adjacent to Monroe County right-of-way for the following: road width of 26 feet. Roadway approach to Harrodsburg Road needs to flare out in accordance with county design standards. Curb and gutter shall be used in turnaround area. Replace 6-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road with 4-foot sidewalk and 2-foot grass strip. And turnaround design be approved by Monroe Fire Protection District and Monroe County Community School Corporation if they plan to send buses into the subdivision or into the development.
Second.
Okay, will you please call the roll, either Jackie or Mr. Wilson?
Okay, I will call the roll on PU 21-03. The Heritage Creek Outline Plan Amendment 2. This is the final hearing. The motion is to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners in regard to the plan unit ordinance with the following conditions. If we can go back up to the beginning of the recommendation. That the petitioner amend the outline plan to meet the highway specifications for roadway width of 28 feet or road width of 26 feet, I'm sorry. And they meet the manual that the roadway approach to Harrodsburg Road flare out in accordance with county design standards. The curb and gutter be used in any turnaround areas, the hammerhead, and that to replace the 6-foot sidewalk on the south side of the road with a 4-foot sidewalk with a 2-foot grass strip, and that the fire department be contacted to make sure the hammerhead will work in regard to accessing emergency vehicles. Is that correct, Jeff, that you had that last condition?
And the school corporation, if they plan to send the bus, and if they plan to send the school buses into the development.
Okay, and both the fire department and the school corporation, if the school corporation plans to utilize the hammerhead for turnaround. Again,
Yes.
a yes vote is vote to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners with the conditions set forth. Jeff McKim?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes, and well-crafted motion, Jeff.
Okay, and Jim Stainbrook has abstained. Julie Thomas?
Yes.
Amy Thompson?
Yes.
Mark Clemens?
Yes.
Trina Ryan Randolph?
Yes.
Bernie Garitas?
Yes.
The motion is approved by an 8-0 vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for all of the good hard work and the patience you put into that over the years. And we look forward to visiting you. And I've just been happy to review this with you. So the next item on the agenda is item number 4, ZOA-21-10, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 815, site plans pertaining to phasing. And this is the final hearing. Mr. Wilson, if you would be so kind as to just go over this with us.
Sure, I'm going to pull up the phasing text document here. Claire, do you want to introduce it, or do you want me to go through it first and you add on? Oh, you're on mute.
Go ahead, Jackie. I'm having a hard time reading the screen for some reason.
Okay, no worries. I'll try to make it a little bit bigger too. So this is the text amendment to chapter 815. Just as a reminder, we did continue the certified site plans for residential commercial construction until next month. So this is just pertaining to the allowance for phasing in subdivision, or sorry, in site plan. So this would be just development that's by right, by zoning, does not involve a subdivision, does not involve a planned unit development. And the two former items that I noted, both subdivisions and planned unit developments, allow for phasing already. So this is to allow that to happen in site planning stages as well for larger projects. So the purpose of this section is simply to facilitate, establish the larger, more complex projects with significant infrastructure and improvements to allow for phasing. Note that this will only be allowed for projects which include land area of 5 acres or more. And staff has taken a lot of this language from other ordinances where this has worked out well for them to consider all of the different items that would be needed to allow for phasing to occur in the county. So the types of things that we would be looking for are illustrative maps showing the phasing lines. We'd be looking for a narrative to go along with that phasing to help us to establish what improvements are required within which phase. And then also, you know, as part of the final phasing approval, we would be looking at each proposed phase as a standalone. So it would be able to meet all of the requirements. Therefore, if the developer does not proceed with a future phase, the phase that's approved and built meets all of our standards. And we would require at a minimum the first phase to include any off-site improvements required for the development. You know, minimum all bioretention that needs to be in for that phase. You know, if there needs to be like base coat for roadways and temporary sediment basins, we are requiring overlapping phases to accommodate that as well. But we are hoping that this phasing plan allows it to meet all the requirements as they go along so that they can receive a certificate of occupancy and land use certificate from us in order to allow for them to keep moving forward on the phasing plan. Stormwater has also reviewed this and from a perspective of stormwater, and Kelsey's here as well to speak to that. It is helpful to break up some of these larger sites into phases so that you don't have a mass grading issue where if you can make it so that they only have to work on a certain phase and they can keep the vegetation of other phases, that can be something that's beneficial for this type of text amendment to go through. So I think I touched on this. Let's see, we did have a note in here that we didn't want there to be sort of leapfrog development so they can work on the next phase while still completing the prior phase. But in order to get a land use certificate or occupancy, that has to be sequential and you can't ask for occupancy of phase 2 before you're done with phase 1. And the purpose of that is just to make sure those baseline improvements needed for the development in phase 1 are completed first, then you can proceed with the future phases. So we've also reached out to some of the developers, and I know there's one person in the audience that was interested in this text amendment and can speak to it, which I know was a comment at the last Plan Commission meeting. But we feel like this is achieving what is similarly applied in the plan unit development and subdivision control. And actually this sets a better precedent because it's a lot more, it provides a lot more description for staff and for petitioners to understand what exactly is needed to apply for a site plan that includes phasing. And we think this will be really, really helpful for our review staff and for the development community as well. So Larry, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it very well. Again, this is really a gap in the ordinance. We did look at how other communities are handling this situation. As we mentioned in the past, we have not had a lot of large projects of a scale which really required phasing. But I think this will be useful in the future for large projects, and will get us around the problem of somebody wanting occupancy before the essential infrastructure and improvements are in to support occupancy. This clarifies you have to have it done in order to occupy the phase, and hopefully I'll avoid future litigation and other issues.
Okay, so do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for staff? I don't see anybody. So I'd like to open it up to the public for comment. And if any member of the public would like to comment on this. Do you see anyone, Jackie? Okay, then I bring it back to the Plan Commission for a motion. Mr. McKim?
Sorry, Ms. Nestor Jelen, I thought you had mentioned that there would be some public comment on this item.
Yeah, sorry, Jeff. I did see them at the beginning of the last petition, but it looks like they signed off.
Okay, do you know anything? Can you characterize any feedback you've received from the development community?
Yeah, so this has been received very positively, I think, by those that are developing some of the larger tracts. And the reasoning is that for some of these larger lot developments that have, very large parking areas or large landscaping requirements that maybe are required later on in the development, but not necessarily up front. We've asked that they complete that all before the first building be occupied, and that's quite a bit of infrastructure and requirements in that first initial phase. So by breaking it up into phases, they're committing to it with those buildings associated with it that are triggering those requirements. So this allows it to be something that's more manageable by a developer to do. And what I'm hearing is that this is more common in other communities and other jurisdictions that they're used to. So
great.
One other thing I would add that because these phases are standalone, in the event of a downturn in the economy or a financial failure by the developer, we're not stuck with a partially built out subdivision or a partially built out project that, this will basically allow, I think, to avoid any problems in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So is there a motion or?
I can make a motion
Okay.
on the matter of ZOA-21-10, amendment to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, chapter 815, site plans phasing. I move we forward the proposed text amendment to the Board of Commissioners with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Wilson or Ms. Nestor Jelen, would you please call the roll?
Yeah, I'll call the roll. The motion is regard to ZOA-21-10, amended to the Monroe County zoning ordinance to amend the text of chapter 815 site plans to create a phasing option. This is the final hearing on the text amendment. Again, the motion is to send a favorable recommendation to the commissioners in regard to the proposed text amendment. Dee Owens,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Jim Steinbrook,
Yes.
Julie Thomas,
Yes.
Amy Thompson,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Ron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Bertie Garitas,
Yeah.
Jeff McKim.
Yes.
The motion is approved by 9-0 vote, and we'll go on to the commissioners with a favorable recommendation for passage.
Okay, great. So we're moving on to the last item, and this is, let me find it on my screen here. My iPad froze up. Oh, okay, thank you. Whoops. This is, I'd like to introduce SSS-21-8, the Marvin R. Smith Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat Road Width Waiver Request, Utility Waiver Request. This is the preliminary hearing, and they're requesting waiver of the final hearing. And this regards 3 parcels on 26.89 acres located in Bean Blossom Township, Section 1 at 9620 North Bowman Road. So Tammy, if you're still here.
Yep.
I
I'm
move
here.
approval of the introduction, or a second approval of the introduction.
All right, I'm going to get started. So the summary here is that this is a preliminary plat to subdivide 1 parcel into 3 lots. And this does require a road width waiver because currently the road is 15 feet wide out there on North Bowman Road. And the subdivision control ordinance for sliding scale subdivisions requires 18 feet. They're also requesting a utility waiver so they don't have to bury 290 feet of overhead utilities. I have a summary of the lot sizes that are being proposed. All of them meet buildable area standards. Lot 1 is going to be considered the parent parcel. It's also got notes on the plat that it will be for recreation only. They do not plan to develop it. They did not pull a septic system for, or septic permit for that. And they do propose that Lot 3 will have a new home on it. And let's see. Just quickly, I was going to give an overview of the plat here. So this is the lot that has the existing home on it. The new home would be located on this part up here on Lot 3. And then Lot 1 is a recreation only lot. It does contain the tree preservation area. No sidewalks are required out here. And these utility lines were not required to be buried, though the petitioner did let me know that they had that done anyway, probably to help with the view of their home. But there is a line that runs right through here, and there's a big line of evergreen trees through here that kind of get tangled. They're kind of like, they conflict a little bit here. So let's see. We'll come back to this plat here in a minute. This is the summary table that was in the plat packet. So we have looked at making sure that the lots that are needing the septic permits are in place. They do have capacity letters in place for both electric and water. And then driveway permits for all 3 lots are in place. Right-of-way dedication and environmental conditions are in good standing and delineated on the plat. And then what the uses are going to be. And this is the topographical version of the plat showing drainage easements and such through here that were approved by the Stormwater Division. So the location, we're in the upper northern part of the county here, so in Bean Blossom Township. And this is what our site conditions currently are. I mentioned those pine trees that kind of run along this one area here. Where we see some of that utility line kind of come into play that should be buried per the ordinance. These are some of the site photos. So the driveway in this upper picture is on the left. And we're just looking here at this 15-foot wide road, north of Bowman Road here. Again, since this is a road width waiver, I thought to include a few photos of it. A second driveway is going to be, I think, somewhere up back in here for the new residential lot, and then the existing Lot 2 driveway. And this is one of the only photos I had that was kind of showing the utility lines that run through here with the evergreen trees, and then an aerial. So the petitioner did file some waiver findings for the road width and for the underground utilities. The plat committee reviewed this on October 21st and recommended approval for the preliminary plat and both the utility and road width waivers with a vote of 3-0. And I have a foggy comment from the highway department that they did support the road width waiver for the sliding scale subdivision. The traffic will increase approximately 10 vehicles per day on a road that has approximately 80 vehicles a day. So that's the statements we have from them. And with that, staff recommends that we approve based on the findings that the preliminary plat meets the subdivision control ordinance. We also recommend approval of the road width waiver request based on the findings of fact. And also then we recommend denial of the utility waiver request based on the findings of fact. We did not find like a hardship for necessarily burying those. Any questions?
So do members of the, okay, Mr. Enright Randolph and Mr. McKim.
Yes, and I'm assuming Tammy sees this question coming. Would you please go ahead and comment on the plat committee's recommendation for the utility waiver?
To comment on it? I mean, you guys recommended approval of everything. We have these rural areas and rural lots that often, you know, there's not a reason that planning staff can support some of these utility undergrounding, you know, projects that are associated with the subdivision control ordinance. It almost needs that the subdivision control ordinance maybe should be re-evaluated if, you know, this is not something that plat committee or the plan commission wants to see with regards to burying some of these utilities. Occasionally we staff can support those. I've supported them, you know, in environmentally sensitive areas for sure, steep slopes and wet areas and such. But in this case, the evergreens themselves seem to conflict with the limes as they grow. So that's where I stand on that one. Is that what you were wanting me to get at, Ron?
Yes, I think the broader statement of re-looking at it, so we could kind of have more predictability of kind of maybe where planning can get behind some of these requests or where it's just non-negotiable for sure. I'll go ahead and extend on that a bit where this particular waiver fits in line with numerous other waivers that are granted at the plat committee level. Since they asked for the road width waiver, it triggers it to the full plan commission. So if they weren't requesting that, they would have got approval from the plat committee and you know, we wouldn't be entertaining this at the plan commission. I do think Tammy brought up an excellent point. We should reevaluate some of that for sure, but all new power line construction will be buried. We're talking about existing power lines, and really where is the intent, I guess, for us to require them to bury those if they're not seeming to be too out of line. I know some of the conversation leads to the aesthetic, you know, look when you're driving up and down the roads, but I think we definitely need to drill into that a bit more because we do typically approve this type of waiver at the plat committee level.
Thank you. Mr. Pittsford?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. My question is obviously I don't think there are any karst concerns in the area where the proposed overhead utility burying would take place, but karst or sorry, limestone development in these areas is pretty sporadic. So we could be introducing a situation where petitioner may be required to get into cutting some stone in order to be able to adequately bury the lines. And given the location, as Tron pointed out, there's really very little benefit and aesthetic value in burying these lines. My only remaining concern would be if there are if there are landscape requirements where trees would have to be planted near the overhead lines, then maybe we would need to consider that. But if there is no landscape requirement that's going to compel planting of trees that may grow into those overhead power lines, then we have no issue with approving this waiver. Those are my comments and some. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Owens?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say about the burying those lines. Yes, new lines. Yes, that's the rule, but I don't see any reason why they should have to bury these lines. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so is Mr. Stainbrook?
Well, I don't know that it would change thought on the waiver of the road width. It looks as though they're anticipating an increase of around 12%. I don't know really what that means as far as the road width in 2021 or next year or the year after. But as traffic increases, even in a rural area, I don't know that I would let a 12%, if I were viewing that as a slight increase, and I think that's the point maybe that Paul was presenting in that anecdote, maybe 12% isn't significant. Okay, but we don't know in years to come, and roadways are pretty important. When we dealt with that road width on Victor Pike, for instance, I think most of us went along with that so that the people didn't have to move their fence or something. And I believe I voted for that. I don't remember how the vote went. I think we were trying to be considerate and so on. But as I drive that road now, oh, not every other day, but I drive Victor Pike over to Rockport Road from Fluck Mill, or, you know, that stretch there. And someday, I don't see anything you could do there at Victor Quarry. I'm not saying that, although maybe so. But I'm saying that road is pretty narrow as you approach the hill and go on to Rockport. That land, I don't know if this has been some time back, so I don't know, Margaret, if that means we gave away that land or we gave away access to that. But the fencing there is pretty close to the present road, and I'm guessing that somehow what we did affected the widening of that road. So I don't know in this case, but as people, I think maybe more than one person pointing out that we have these guidelines or rules for a reason, and I don't disagree with Dee's point on the property there as far as burying that, and maybe Tron or someone else. But on the road width, I don't know if the commission, if Paul and others think that's fine. It certainly looks scenic there and rural, but who knows someday. Okay, Margaret, thank you. That's too much.
Thank you, Mr. Stainbrook. So are there any other questions or discussion among members of the Plan Commission? If not, we'll go to the petitioner and or the petitioner's representative, and we will hear from them.
Tammy, do you know if your petitioner's here?
It's Eric Deckard is here and his hand is raised.
Okay.
Hi, Eric.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Eric Deckard with Deckard Land Surveying. I appreciate the opportunity here this evening to go over this petition with everybody. I was prepared to provide with some additional comments here with regards to the utilities, but it appears that the commission is seeing this with clarity and understand what the situation is, and I really have no further comments at this time. But if you have any questions that you may have for me, be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Deckard. And with his kind indulgence, I'd like to recognize Mr. Bernie Garitas. If you have a question for Mr. Deckard.
Just an observation. I want to just take a minute to make note of the petitioner's representative's effort to lay out very nicely placed and worded findings that were very logical and easy to follow.
Very nice. So with that being said, is there a member of the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? And if you're here, you can raise your hand. I think Mr. Decker's hand is raised, but it may still be raised. And if you're calling in by telephone, *9. Okay, I don't see anyone. Do you, Jackie? Okay, that being said, is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please raise your hand or press *9. Okay, if there's no one there, I bring it back to the commission for a motion. A motion?
Yeah, sorry, Tron, I see you and Jeff both have your hands up. I was prepared to make a motion, and if that's what you're going to do, I would ask permission to take action. If not, then I'll defer.
Mr. Pittsford, please take that action.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie, for bringing up the numbers here. In case number SSS-21-8- Marvin R. Smith, sliding scale subdivision preliminary plat and road width waiver and utility waiver request, and a request for waiver of final hearing, I move approval based on the findings of fact with the addition of one finding under the category of burial of, under the category of utility waiver request. And that is, in this area, the limestone deposits and the lack of a requirement for landscaping near the overhead power lines make the requirement for burial of utility or overhead utilities to be superfluous and therefore not required. That is my motion in sum.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
I will, but I do have a question of clarification. I believe the request was just for existing power lines and not new construction power lines. Is that correct?
I'm going to make it so that any power lines that they do not wish to bury do not have to be buried. And if anybody wishes to withdraw their second, I'll reconsider.
Okay, I will proceed with a vote. Again, the motion is to approve the sliding scale subdivision 21-8 Marvin Smith sliding scale, and including a waiver of the road width requirement and a waiver of the underground utility requirement, as well as a waiver of the final hearing. Again, a motion to approve a yes vote is a motion to approve the sliding scale with a road width waiver, the utility waiver, and with a waiver of final hearing. Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Jim Steenbrook?
I'm going to vote yes, so I guess I should just do it. But I'm a little uneasy, Jerry, about the waiver of the utility waiver. Maybe in this case, yeah, and that's why I voted yes. But I'd like to see for this from the standpoint of maintenance by the utility companies and for the aesthetics. I mean, I've buried 3 pets out here, and I know you're right about the stone. That was quite a project for an old guy, but our utilities are buried, and I think it looks better for us and maybe neighbors that they're buried. So I'm voting yes, but my heart's just not in it, except you're such a good guy, Jerry. I'm voting yes.
All right, all complaints about not burying the overhead power lines can be directed to my personal email to be shared only on request.
Okay.
Julie Thomas.
I'm going to vote no because I think new utilities should be buried, and that still doesn't mean you're not a good guy, Jerry, which means you are a good guy.
Amy Thompson.
I am also going to vote no because I think new utility construction should be buried. But otherwise, I would have voted yes.
Mara Clements?
I follow Amy Thompson's, and it's not just aesthetic for me. It's a matter of continuity of service and best practice, and we should be employing and implementing best practices for our community. So I vote no.
Okay. Tron and Ray Randolph?
I'm going to vote no, just due to the fact that it falls outside of the consistency that I've tried to apply when looking at these petitions, case by case. I've been very supportive of keeping the overhead existing utilities in place. Just too much of a catch-all for me to support.
Bernie Garitas?
All right, forgive my ignorance here, but I'm going to ask a question. What's the current vote, Larry?
It's 4 against, 2 in favor.
Okay, so if this motion fails, will the existing overhead utilities be required to be buried?
No, I think we'd have to make somebody would have to make a new motion, right?
I'm prepared to make a new motion.
Correct.
Okay, let me.
I see the handwriting on the wall, guys.
Get us out of this.
Hey, I've still got the floor. Okay, so I want Larry to be able to explain what our options are here, because I don't think anybody wants this petition to fail. And I think everybody agrees almost everybody at least agrees that the existing overhead lines can remain and new lines need to be buried. But I don't want to sink this petition.
Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if this fails, you can have another vote on a new motion. Dave, is that correct? Dave?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so Bernie, they will not be stuck with burying the existing overhead line if it fails, but we would be open to a new motion after this. I think we're in a vote and we have to continue.
Yeah. So let's continue and let's finish this vote and start another one.
I abstain.
Okay, great.
Great.
I think that motion officially failed.
Jeff McKim?
Yes.
Okay, Dee Owens?
No, and Have got a motion for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Have at it, Dee. It's
Okay,
all
the motion
you now.
fails.
I failed.
Okay, the
Well,
motion fails by a
you
vote of
tried.
5-3 with
This
one
is the
abstention.
worst. This is the worst reality TV alive.
In the matter of SSS-21-8 Marvin R. Smith Sliding Scale Subdivision Preliminary Plat. I would like to make a motion that we approve the road width waiver request, that we approve the utility waiver request. And by that, I mean existing lines stay where they are, new lines are buried. And that we approve the waiver of the final hearing request.
Second.
Okay, I will take the vote again. Motion is to approve the SSS-21-8 Marvin R. Smith Sliding Scale Subdivision, including the road width waiver request and the utility waiver request only for existing electrical lines, not for new construction, which would still be required to be undergrounded. And also the waive the preliminary hearing. Again, a vote, I vote as a vote to approve the subdivisions with the accompanying waivers as stated in the motion. Jim Steenbrook.
Aye.
Julie Thomas.
Yes.
Amy Thompson.
Yes.
Mark Clemens.
Yes.
Tron and Ray Randolph.
Yes.
Bernie Garitas.
Yep.
Jeff McKim,
I just want to commend Jerry for his first attempt, but yes.
okay, Dee Owens,
Yes, and yes, thank you, Jerry, for clearing the runway there. Yeah.
Jerry Pittsford,
With a humble bow to my successor, I vote yes. Thank you, Deke.
okay. The subdivision is approved with the waivers by 9-0 vote.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn it, or would we like to keep plowing on through our nothingness?
I'll
No,
move for
I
adjournment.
defer to Dee. Let Dee make that motion, please.
Okay, let's please make that motion.
So moved.
Okay. If there are any objections, please state them now. Otherwise, let's just have a good night, and thank you all for all of your good work and your good thoughts.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.